Hello everybody, I'm Roadblock and this is a Raid Shadow Legends video, and as you can see, I'm not alone. We have the master, we've got Boozor, one of, if not the top name in free-to-play Raid Shadow Legends. How you doing today, Boozor?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on Roblox. Really appreciate it. Always excited to talk about Raid and free-to-play life with another enthusiastic free-to-play player as well. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so happy to have you here. I've been looking to make a video like this for a very long time. So what we're going to do today, guys, is we are on my free-to-play account. Now, if you've been following my journey on this free-to-play account, you'll know it's about a year and a half old, and the luck on it has been somewhat ridiculous. And I've always wanted to show it off, especially to a fellow free-to-play player like Boozor, and I figured then we could also kind of talk strategy a little bit and maybe even talk about what really is luck when it comes to Raid Shadow Legends. So first of all, I just want to go ahead and show you the account. So Boozor actually hasn't seen this yet.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's have a look. See, yeah. Oh, you got Naeus. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You got Odin. That's nice. Odin, Georgette, Narcissus. And you said how old is this account?
This
Two
account is
years?
year and a half. Year and a half, not even technically, because it was a year in September was when I hit my 1 year mark.
Yeah.
So I'm like a year and 5 months, I'd say, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got quite a bit of riches here, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you got very strong roster. You also have like the +4s. You got Teox already too.
Mm-hmm.
You got the +4 epics, and then you got the +2 seer as well. Lots of Legos, not built. And yeah, it's definitely bountiful riches in this account. So
So
very nice.
what I wanted to talk about briefly, and we talked about this a little bit before we went live, was about kind of luck in Raid Shadow Legends. Now, the one that I always want to bring up when I talk about luck is my Odin that I pulled here. So I actually got him from the tournament. I actually won the tournament. And I basically put every resource I had into it just to hit the 10,000 points. So luckily, that's the lucky part. No one in the tournament participated. So I was
Yeah.
able to get like 10,100 points to be able to get Odin. I think it was 10,000.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's 10,000 minimum. Yeah, I remember that. I think it was a big soulstone at the top reward. Um, yeah, I mean Odin is I definitely regret not going all in for Odin. I think for that tournament I had probably something like 35,000 points available to me, and I kind of sat on it a little bit. I think the winner was like 16,000. So for me, like whenever I see Odin, I kind of regret that I didn't go all in to get him because he's definitely worth it. He's definitely worth it. So nice pickup there for you.
Thank you. So the other really interesting thing that happened on the account that I love to talk about and share is actually how I got Georgid and a Turvold. As you can see, he's actually not built yet on the account. This was a couple of pulls ago, but I actually got on a 2x, I got both Turvold and Georgid in the same 10 pull.
Oh
And I was
wow.
just like blown away by that. It's one of the things that I love to share. It is my most watched video. I've
Was it
clipped it.
was it a 2x event or?
Yeah, it was a 2x event. Yeah. And I was just pulling shards and happened to get them right underneath each other in the
Yeah,
the 10 pull. So
yeah,
that
nice.
was
Congrats. Yeah.
Yep. And most recently, this is my most recent Void pull, which was Narcissus. Now, I didn't go for the Ancora Fusion, unfortunately. I can't remember if the account was too new for me to go for it or not, but I didn't, for whatever reason, go for it. My biggest regret, because I am very starved on this account for supports, specifically cleanse, reviver, block, debuff, that type, a Python, Duchess type support. But yeah, I love the account and I love being able to show it off whenever I get an opportunity. But what I wanted to ask you today was, what are your thoughts on luck versus what I tend to call more of a calculated risk? Like, what is there a line where, between people that just pull shards and get really good champions and people that set themselves up to pull really good champions?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's easy to say, it's easy for people to say that luck is skillful when they get lucky, of course. But I would have to think that there are situations where, people can, kind of, capitalize on a little bit better when they are prepared to get lucky. Like, for example, you can kind of manufacture or make the best situations, you know, more inducive for lucky moments. So, for example, like, pulling during a good 2x event, for example, when you're, when you have a lot of when you're saved up shards for those events, for example, or pulling for, good progressive events when you're close to mercy. So basically tracking things like mercy, just obviously like gathering resources, gathering shards, preparing for these events, right? Saving up for fusions, be in a situation where you can capitalize on having a good fusion, right? That's like, you can say, oh, you're just doing a fusion, yeah, but you're also waiting for good fusion, for example, being prepared for that. Some people just can't be prepared for events, and that kind of takes away your chance at being lucky. So I do think that although you can't just say you make your own luck, you at least can put yourself in a position to get lucky, I guess. So
Yeah, no, I love that. I get a lot of comments, we talked about this a little bit, but I get a lot of comments where it's like, oh, well, you just got really lucky because, I did pull Newt very early on the account. And like a couple of, another story I'd love to share about it was, for example, Geomancer. I pulled very, very early on the account, but there was this really unique situation where I think I had Husk and I was ready to level him up because I hadn't really pulled anything else, but I knew there was a 2x coming up. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Husk. So I said, let's wait, guys. Let's wait, and we'll see what happens on the upcoming 2x. And I hit and got a Geomancer. And then, okay, then I built Geo, and I felt like I just kept always getting something better to pull or to level up instead of Husk. So he never made it out of that 50 slot. But, that's kind of what I look at and think of when I say like calculated risk. It's like, well, we can wait a little bit and see.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, like just being more experienced in the game and being more experienced with like the situations and the events. Obviously, you were experienced enough to save your resources, right? So that gave you a position to get, more lucky, for example. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so it makes sense. Yeah, I like Husk personally. I use them quite a lot. Especially good for Hydra and all that stuff. Especially when you're lacking good damage dealers later on. But this account looks pretty good. You might not need a champion like Husk, right? So
he's one, and I did another collab recently where I put him on, and again, it's just my opinion. I always get nervous because I know this is a hot take, but I actually have him on like my kind of most overrated list. But for me, it's because I had a bad experience with him on my main account. So I have a main account, it's a paid account, and I was struggling on Hydra, and I didn't know what I was doing. So it's my own fault, right? But I didn't know what I was doing, and I pulled a Husk, and I said, oh, I saw a video, he's supposed to be really good, and I built him, and, I didn't have the accuracy. It was a bad affinity for the head to be provoked by his A1. It was all these things that I didn't know at the time, and I was like, oh, this guy sucks. So...
Yeah, I mean his A1 isn't like 100% chance to provoke anyways. I think it's like 50% twice. So it's like 75%. It's pretty decent. Actually, maybe it's 40% twice. But it's not bad. But yeah, affinity issues and stuff. And also you need pretty good gear for him to do good damage. You need pretty good gear, so maybe your account just wasn't ready at that point. So
yeah. No, I think that's a great note. I think that's something, and that's what I actually love. Thing I love most about your content, not to kiss up to you too much, but what I really like about your content is you have that banner at the top that says, you know, advice is not for everybody, or something along those lines, right? Where, you know, every account is different. So
Hmm.
where a husk might be great on some accounts, on an account like this one, maybe husk doesn't make the cut, right?
Hmm. It's true. It's you know, the classic example is you know, like I pulled, for example, like I pulled Kymar very early on one of my accounts, and I never actually used him because that account wasn't ready for a champion like Kymar. Like to put Kymar in a dungeon team on that account is basically just a wasted slot. Like there's no point in resetting like the champions on his team because the champions on his team can't do anything with the reset skill. Like it's like they just don't do any damage. So it's like he's a great champion. He's one of the top non-void legendaries in the game, but you know, for an account that's not ready to maximize his use, you know, Kymar is a great example. Another good example would be like Seer. Some accounts are just not ready for Seer. Like Seer's a great champion. If you pull her early, if you think she's going to be the one and done, you know, damage dealer for all your wave content, that's not true, right? You need her to have the right team around her, and you need her to be in a really good build for her to be really effective. So she's one of those champions that you know, might not work for your account at that time, right? So.
No, absolutely. Even on this account, she is built, but
Mhm.
I actually don't use her on this account because I've actually just had, as far, I don't have the exactly what you talk about, like the cooldown reset for her.
Yep.
And I don't really have the supports to keep my team alive. So what I really rely on for this particular account is locking them down with Odin and Armands, and then I just kill everything with Thor. Basically, is my strategy.
Yeah, and that's a very viable strategy. It's probably like slightly slower compared to like, you know, a full seer team,
Hmm.
but you know, it's you got them all built out and you don't need anything special to run them and, you know, it's probably very consistent anyways. You got double stun, double CC and
Yep.
so, you know, you don't really need the seer until you get the reset. Like Kymar would be the big one. I mean, you could make something work with maybe Renegade. But you know, it's up to you to like you will want to allocate resources for that specific build. Like if your Thor build works fine, then it might just be better just to save the resources, right? Especially if you're free to play on this account.
Yeah,
So totally
absolutely.
makes sense.
And even on my main account, I finally built a seer team. I've never pulled a major cooldown reduction champion on there, but I have Lady of Ereth and Emic, and so I actually run them together, and that fuels the seer team because they both bring the buffs and they bring the cooldown reduction. So I'm a little proud of that team too. But on this one, yeah, I just don't have the setup for her. I probably have a renegade somewhere in there, but um,
I'm sure you can make it work. It's just, you know, whether you want to devote the resources, right? Like I said, you have your staple champions and they're working fine for you, so there's no real reason to, you know, deviate too much and build a seer team just to shave a couple seconds.
yeah.
Like, you know, I saw your seer build. She looks good. She's like 200 something crit damage. Should in Savage should be able to clear most of the lower level waves.
Mm-hmm.
But you know,
A little
it might
slow.
not. Yeah, it might not be clean, right? It might not be clean. It might be, you know, too much of a stretch for your account just to make it work. So just use what works. And yeah, super raids makes it a lot easier now. You know, the timing of dungeons is not that important. I think.
So, um, okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, or well, I kind of wanted your advice just in general.
Yeah.
Um, so if you guys haven't already, which I'm pretty sure, I mean, when I first started doing free to play, one of the first comments I got was, "Hey, have you seen Boozor? Do you know about Boozor?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let me check him out." And then so you have been kind of the guide for me for a very long time when I started this account and my free to play journey.
Mhm.
Um,
Thank you.
and I'm kind of in a weird position. Now, I think I know the answer, but I've gotten a lot of power very quickly. And now it's how do I use that power? And so there are a few areas of the game that I certainly struggle with. A big part of it is for me is Hydra. And I know we don't necessarily have time for a full take over or anything along those lines. But I was curious if you had any kind of thoughts that you might be willing to share, any recommendations to see what we could maybe do about improving my Hydra. So, a little
Yeah.
background: this Hydra is it can do brutal. I think 40 million on brutal with the right affinity.
Mhm.
But the not this week, but or yeah, this I haven't done my keys this week, which tonight's gonna be a long night. But um, the last week I couldn't do brutal, so I had to drop it down to hard. But
I see. Okay. Do you manual your Hydra runs?
I do, yes.
Okay. So you're saying your account is like a year, let's say a year and a half year old account. Do you have your champions like fully booked, like legendary books? Do you have issues with that or?
No, everybody that I use is fully booked unless they're a recent pull like a Narcissus.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, for this team, so this is the best team you have. Your
This
highest.
is
Yeah.
as far as this is the best one that I have been able to really come up with. Provoke here, um, my increased speed here, decreased speed here, block buffs, cleansing and hexing. I don't want to bring Godseeker. However, the bunny dies if
Yeah. Yeah.
he dies too often. So I kind of have to bring a reviver mostly for the bunny.
Okay. What about so you're one keying Nightmare with this team on the right affinity. Um, what about somebody like Teox? Teox brings lots of damage, so you can maybe push up to Nightmare. I don't think your gear is that far off, judging by what you clicked on so far. Your Teox is a little bit slow here, but
Yes.
yeah, maybe that's for arena or something. Um, but I mean, you definitely have the champions like Geomancer is really good, Ninja's really good, and these champions don't require crazy gear. That's the thing. So you can definitely take advantage of this because if you're bringing in champions like Bunny, Thor, you're gonna need really good gear for them to carry the team, right? So um, that might be something worth considering. Geomancer gets better in the higher difficulties, so he'll fit right in for like a Nightmare team. Ninja can be okay, but he does more damage with crit capped, high crit damage and stuff like that. So maybe I would focus more on like Geomancer type teams. Also, Nut is pretty good for like Nightmare just to get things started. He has good survivability as well. He brings weaken, he brings attack down. He brings built-in leech in his kit, so he's easier to keep alive. I saw you have Wixwell. Wixwell's he's a great champion. He can provoke, and then he has the great shield to keep your team alive. Also brings the decreased attack. Let's see. Wait, let me check out the stats. So the stats on this Wixwell is a little bit light. His accuracy is a little bit light for Brutal as well. So if you're running this against Brutal, it might be difficult.
Okay.
To land your provokes. I would say you probably need closer to 300 accuracy for Brutal if you want to cover all the heads. I'm not saying like 200 won't work. 200 will work maybe like 3/4 of the time, like 75% against most of the heads. But I think one of the heads has closer to requires closer to 300 accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would double check some of your stat requirements if you're trying to go into Brutal or higher. Like Nightmare would be 330 accuracy. That's what you would need. So just make sure you're fully checked all the dots, dotted all the I's, across all the T's for your stat requirements and stuff. How's the bunny accuracy looking? Because he has to land the some of his debuffs, right? Yeah, his accuracy is a little bit low on this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need some accuracy on this to land. I know he's there mostly for speed up, but for example, if you're relying on Thor for his speed down, Thor needs accuracy. So it might be tough for this, year and a half old account to hit all the checkpoints, right? So that's actually pretty good. 250, that's fine. I think that works.
He's my best built champion by far.
Okay, good. Yeah, good. Yeah, he needs a lot of stats to make him work, especially if you need him for a decreased speed.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think just based on quick look on that team, I think you cut Godseeker first.
Yeah.
But you can cut her for basically anything, and the team would most likely improve unless you really need her revive for something. Because she's not bringing too much for this team, like an extension, a little bit of healing, and a revive. You might want to bring a revive. I mean, you have Mithrala for shields, you have Wixwell for shields. That might be able to keep the bunny alive. How does your Mithrala look? Fully booked, quick. I mean, it works. It works fine for Hydra for sure. Obviously, like accuracy resistance a little low for arena, but
Yeah.
it works fine. Decent HP as well. Yeah, I mean this looks totally fine for brutal. So let me think. You have decreased speed. So Bunny's hard to land. Bunny's not gonna land leech.
Yeah.
Decreased speed comes from Thor. So you decrease attack. Anybody with decreased attack? Wixwell has decreased attack. Wixwell needs a little bit more accuracy.
Yeah.
I'd say 250. Like that would be like minimum probably. And then your champion to replace Godseeker. I mean, if you bring in Geomancer or Newt, I think that team would just take off.
I
Because
used to run it with
yeah,
Newt. Yeah, I used to
yeah,
run Newt in that Godseeker spot for
yeah.
hard difficulty, but whenever I try to take it up to brutal, I have to bring a reviver. So, and I don't really. One of the things that I love about the free to play challenge is it opens my eyes to a lot of other champions because I don't really have. I want a speed aura, but
Yeah.
I don't really have a good all battles aura. I guess I should probably build. I think is he?
Shark's pretty good. Yeah, Shark's pretty good. He brings AoE block buffs, right? I think.
Yep,
Yep. Yeah, he does.
with Terminator as
Then
well.
yeah, so he can be pretty good, and then speed in all battles, and I think decreased defense on A1. I think
Yep.
decreased defense. Yep, decreased defense. So yeah, I think people do use him. He's pretty good for that spot. And then he also brings a little bit of extra damage from his passive hex stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, for this team, Newt would bring decrease. Sorry, Newt would bring weaken, which would basically strengthen the output, your damage output from Thor and Bunny. Geomancer also brings weaken, and he brings his own damage, and he brings a damage reduction from his passive. So that kind of mitigates some of the survivability that Aniri brings. So Geomancer would bring a little bit of damage reduction, so it might make the team last a little bit longer. But obviously no revive. Like, if you're manualing, it might be a little dicey, but you have two shields which can be alternated to keep your team kind of alive. and you have decreased attack, and you have extension with Wixwell as well. So maybe the shields might be enough to keep your team alive. That's what I'm thinking. But like at that point, you're probably guaranteeing yourself like a one key nightmare. But I think for you to head into one key brutal, if you want to head to nightmare, the highest difficulty, you probably need to bump up your stats, like 10%, 10%, 15% or so, and then you can feel a little bit more comfortable. But I still feel like this team probably makes it, but maybe just barely, kind of thing. I also feel like Teox definitely deserves to be in a team, but maybe you can slot him into like a lower level team to. Yeah.
So I want to rebuild him. He is on but before I get too much hate in the comments for his really slow speed, this was just a quick throw gear on him type of build. He is fully booked. Lizardman I'm lacking a little bit on overall. But I do want to pair him up very, very much with Skull Lord Vargal as the provoker.
Yeah, good idea.
Because of his recent buff as well, so I get a free revive if Teox dies. I could maybe run him a little squishier.
Yeah.
Get decrease attack, provoke. I think I've run them in a lower team. To get the full. Let me ask you this, because this is great because this is something that. How much of the faction unity stuff with him? Do I want to? Would it be? Is it beneficial to bring a Venomage, for instance, to fully, to get more of the faction unity stuff, or does that really not matter? We just pair him up for now with Skull Lord, and then like a more standard Hydra team.
Yeah, I think so for Teox, I think the for Hydra, I think the biggest benefit comes from one faction unity companion or maxed out. So at maxed out, I think he gets additional damage from his debuffs, per debuff or something. Yeah, 20,
Hmm.
yeah, big one there. So and then the 2 and the 3 slot is not as important. But the 1 slot is really good because it gives Teox a chance to counter attack. So for me, like if you can pair them up with 1, that's fine. Or otherwise, it's all like all. So 1 or all or
Okay.
none. So that those are your options: 1, all, or none. There's no point in going 2 or 3, I think, because you don't need the sheep stuff. You don't need like the block revive, the bonus
Yeah.
there. So yeah, so if you have 1, that's going to give you a little bit extra damage from his counterattacks. Personally, I have him like his speed's not super crazy relevant because he'll gain a lot of speed from you applying debuffs. So it's not crazy relevant. He'll get the amount of turns for him, but personally, like the Teox that I built is just really fast. Like I just focus on
Yeah.
him using his A1s and then just having a really strong A1, champion with him, right? Like a really strong high crit damage champion with him. Thor would be a good Thor would be a really strong companion because Thor's A1 hits really hard.
Yeah.
And you already said that he is your best built champion. So Teox and Thor would be pretty good. Problem with Teox is just he's a damage dealer. He doesn't bring any debuffs or buffs to your team. So
Hmm.
like I would say like put Thor and Teox on the same team, but then you have the bunny, and then it's kind of like now you have like Teox, which is kind of squishy without all his bonuses, and then you have Bunny, which is squishy, and then you have Thor, which is squishy. So you got 3 squishy guys, and if your gear is not like overpowering the difficulty, then it's gonna be hard to keep them alive. So maybe it's best to separate them, and then yeah, I think your account should be able to one key brutal without too much difficulty, which is a really good spot still. Like a year and a half free to play account to one key brutal. I think that's a really good spot already. So I wouldn't fault you too much with being a little shy on the stats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like for me, like year and a half into the game, I was probably finishing up Ramontu, and then but my gear obviously wasn't like insane, and I didn't have a lot of it. Um, so yeah, I mean, you have Savage gear, you have Lethal gear, so you definitely put in a lot of work and got some good builds going on. Um, Accuracy is probably one of the stats that you can probably make up the most easily too. Like with just
Hmm.
one aura, you can just make it all up, even if you're short like 100, like
Well,
with
and
Bunny and
pinpoint
stuff.
and
Yeah,
feral gear too is
yeah,
I've found that recently on the challenge count that I'm able to get
yeah,
really high levels of accuracy early on. Some people need rebuilds too. Unfortunately, with the I love this account the most, but it's unfortunately getting a little bit of neglect lately while I've been on my other free to play challenge account. But that's starting to stabilize now, so I'm gonna be able to come in here and get some big rebuilds. I think the next time they do a which I feel like should be soon. They do a free gear transfer thing. I can't remember what it's
yeah.
called.
It's once every month. It's usually halfway through Centranos. So
Yeah.
yeah, if we have a quick look at Centranos, it's probably like a week away because
But
Centranos just opened 6 days ago. So it's probably like a week away.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I noticed let's see what else. You also have you also have Shamail. Shamail could be like on team 2. He could even be on
Hmm.
team 1 to be honest. You also have like Shamail, like that's really good. You have Gwendolyn the owl. She brings decreased speed and leech, which is really good. And then she also brings she brings plus accuracy.
Hmm.
Plus accuracy. That's not too important, but she brings the decreased speed, which is really good.
Yep.
She's squishy too, but you can definitely have her in like a lower team.
No, she's one of my favorite champions. I use her on the main account for um
Chimera.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I use her on Chimera here too, but she's in need of a rebuild as well. I think what happened, and I'm sure you probably see this. I know you do a lot of takeovers. I do quite a few as well, and I think something that tends to happen, especially when you get so many shiny things to play with,
Hmm.
that you want to gear everybody up. And eventually, like Teox, until I got Narcissus, Teox was the last nuker I got. That's why he's so slow. He has the scraps, you know, the best gear on Thor, second best on Wukong, you know, and then as you were, you know, so then when I finally pulled Teox, I was like, okay, let's build him. I want to build him. I'm so excited to build him. And I put the best gear that I had left over on him, and it really hurts him because there's no speed on a lot of the gear where you would want to see that speed.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, from what I can see in the top of your roster, like you basically committed to champions that are very good. So you don't expect, like you shouldn't think that you're not putting your best champions to work. So you give them the best builds, right? But yeah, you're right. You have a lot of shiny things. You need to focus a little bit on certain things. But I mean, you're probably at that point in your account where you can kind of start building up more champions for like more specialized roles. Like for example, like champions in arena. Like you mentioned, like you wanted like dedicated supports that do certain things. So once you start getting those champions, you definitely just you build them out like properly and with your best gear and stuff. In the beginning when you're free to play, you basically have like a handful of champions with good gear, and then as you grow your roster, you usually like you do like this. I kind of think of it like you condense your gear, and then once you get a bigger roster because you have an influx of shards from basically doing Ultra Nightmare, you spread your gear out, and then you condense your gear again, and then you spread your gear out. So your roster gets big and then you condense again. So right now you probably had a condensed gear in the beginning. You had a big roster. You spread out your gear, and now you have to focus back in again. So that's what I mean. Like you have to focus back in on your best champions, on exactly what you want to do, in whatever area that you are focusing on. So if you're focusing on Hydra, you want them to be in your best gear. Luckily, there's some overlap here. Like obviously Thor, Thor's good everywhere. Therefore, if you give him the best gear, he's going to be good everywhere. So champions that have great overlap is going to be extra beneficial. So Wukong, I would say, is very good. He brings AoE block buffs, so he's going to be very good in Hydra as well. Great champion to invest in. This one probably works fine, 215 accuracy. A little bit on the slow side, but honestly,
Yeah.
still probably fine. Like you can use him for a block buff on one of your Hydra teams. Any Hydra team with an AoE decreased defense, I think. Because, otherwise, unless you're running 3 Ugos, I don't know. You just have 1 Ugo? Plus 4 Ugo? Oh no, don't tell me you have plus 4, but
Yeah. So, well, yeah, like I love Hugo, and on my main account, I have a, well, okay, that's gonna sound way worse, but on my main account before, I don't even want to say it. I'm so embarrassed, but I actually have fed Ugos on the main account before, which is a terrible, terrible mistake. But and by the time I realized her worth, um, it was too late. As for why I plus forward her here, I think at the time my thought process was that I didn't quite have enough roster and gear to really make those deeper teams. So I wanted to use her in the main team, have her plus 4, and then use Wukong. Honestly, it was a mistake. I could try to defend it all I want, but it was a mistake to plus 4 her.
edit this out. Edit this out.
Yeah,
Just
no,
kidding,
I'll leave it in. I'll leave it in. We all make mistakes, right? We gotta remember that. But the good news is I can't plus her anymore, so we're bound to get a new one. No, Hydra's always been a little bit less of a priority for me on this account, but now that we're really ramping up, I think it's time that I start shifting things around and stop. The luck carried me very far early on, and now I think it's time to move on from there.
Yeah. I think like you reached a point where you have guys in Savage gear. You started building lethal gear. Your next step is probably moving towards like Stone Skin protection gear. Protection is going to increase your damage for Hydra and stuff. So you need to focus a little bit on Hydra. Stone Skin obviously for arena. And then you want to incorporate lethal and Stone Skin together in the same build for your arena champions, of course. And then after that, you're gonna need gear for Centranos, because Centranos you get merciless gear, and merciless is the best damage dealing gear set, especially for Hydra. So and that's beyond, that would be after you get like solid one key nightmare Hydra teams and you're pushing for max damage, because you don't need merciless to do max damage on Hydra and get one keys. You can get one keys all day without merciless gear.
Yeah.
But merciless is like, the top of the top, and when you want to do the best damage, and that's going to be like at least a year away probably for this account. So your account, you're probably still fishing away for Hydra gear. Once you get those protection sets, 9-piece sets going, you can definitely ramp up a lot of your damage, putting your supports in 9-piece protection. How's the resources on this account, like gems and silver and books and stuff? 43 million silver, 3,000 gems. Okay. Okay. Level 84 still. I mean, it's still very young account, to be honest. It's still very young, a year and a half, very young account. So yeah, I mean, great, it's great job, right? Great job. So yeah, it looks good. You have enough for one champion. That's usually how I do it. I usually save enough for one Lego champion if I can help it. You never know when you pull that game-changing Lego, and then you want to book them out right away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I usually save one as well. Oh, your Narcissus not even booked out.
I literally just pulled him.
Oh, I see.
So I knew I was at mercy on my voids.
Nice.
I pulled during a progressive for Siphi because I really need, a Siphi, Duchess, Python, something like of that caliber would really be. I'm sure I can figure out a way to make it work without it, but I really want something like that. It'll make it easier for me to find ways to get success. But we didn't hit on that, and so my mercy tracker was just a little bit off. So then I pulled during the Acrizia progressive, and we hit on Narcissus. So I haven't booked him. I've barely built him.
Are you at that stage in this account where you're really into focusing on arena, or is that still just kind of a back burner type of thing for you right now?
I'm gold 5 everywhere. Tag arena. I'm not even gold, man. We can make a whole video about tag arena if you want to, but I have a lot of hate in my heart for live arena. I've not been able to hit gold on live arena even on my main account. So, but as far as live arena goes, both this account and my main account are in silver. And I'm not, until they made the changes, I've never had it never lined up with my schedule for me to be able to do live arena. And now if I'm going to do live arena, I do it on the challenge account now. So, once the challenge account is done, I'm going to take a nice break from any new free-to-play series, and we're going to focus and lock in on these series for sure. My big damage dealer that I use the most right now in live arena, everywhere is Nice. And
for sure.
I want to make sure that this will be my last question because we are getting a little long here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to know if, what are your thoughts on this build? What, is Stone Skin viable option for him too? I don't really know how to build him, and being a mythical and somewhat newer, there isn't as much information out there for me to really gain.
Yeah, it's mythicals and stuff. It's one of those content areas where not a lot of people cover, because you're not going to get a lot of positive you're not going to get a lot of positive feedback from it, because a lot of people, they just don't have it, and so they can't really relate to it. So a lot of the info, or a lot of the examples that you see are what you see in practice. So from what I see for Nice, is that he's really good in live arena. He can hit really hard, so you can definitely build him in a damage build. So you have him in damage build. Or you can definitely build him in Stone Skin as well. So either way works. I think the deployment of him is important. You would use him in arena when he has really strong advantage, right? So his disadvantage is that when he transforms, he can die right away, right? So you want him to always take advantage of his, I guess, when he dies, he transforms into his part 2, and then he's just a menace, right?
Mhm.
But if he takes the multi hits when he's in his form 1, he just dies right away, right? Is that one of his weaknesses, or am I being totally wrong on this?
Oh,
Because personally, I never played with him myself. I like saw him on the test server and I was like, oh, this guy looks interesting, like, aesthetically, but I never actually played with him myself. And from what I see in live arena, he's an absolute menace, especially with his second form here.
you're absolutely right. That's my biggest question mark with him. He transforms, and I'd say probably 30% of the time he dies after transforming, whether it's a bomb or a double hitter and the animation
Yeah.
is just late. Sometimes I have a hard time being like, wait, why did he? I'm so confused. Why did he die there? Right. Um,
Yeah.
but
So I think deployment is important. You have to use him in the right spot. So he's not like a champion that you just pick for every fight. Like if I
okay.
were to have him for live arena, um, like I said, like I don't have him and I've never played tested him personally, but that's kind of what I see. Like he's not like a generalist where you bring him all the time. So for example, like I use like somebody like Taras as basically like a super generalist, right? He just goes in and he's good against basically any kind of team almost, right? So you don't even need to see what the enemy team is, and you pick a champion like Taras. Good survivability, good damage. He has AoE damage, multi-hit damage, single target damage, and he can just handle any situation, almost any situation. So Nyes, I think, is more situational. So you maybe have to be more accustomed to when he's really, really good, as opposed to bringing him in all the time and then just having him be kind of lackluster.
Okay.
But obviously, the more you play with him, the more accustomed you will be to know what his weaknesses are and what his strengths are. So that's probably my only advice, personally.
Oh,
I don't want to.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hmm.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, on truly from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for being on my channel today. It really does mean the world to me, honestly, because we've all been new creators at one point, right? And this is awesome to be able to just chat with somebody that I've looked up to for such a long time is a lot of fun as well. Do you have anything want to let my viewers know? I'm sure they probably know what you already, but let them know like where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. So my channel is Boozor, on YouTube. We do Raid Shadow Legends content. Focusing on free to play gameplay, end game gameplay, and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on. Thanks for reaching out, and it's fun to chat always. Obviously we're very passionate about Raid, and it's always great to talk to other creators about their creator journey, and just chatting Raid. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for setting it all up, and we will have a video on my channel. So if you guys want to have more content from the both of us, definitely check it out on my channel. So thank you guys for watching. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder for you guys, the 22nd of February, that is going to be my birthday live stream. I've been promoting it on all my videos. So please, if you can, come hang out. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. And if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to support my account right now. We are making that push to 5,000 subscribers. So thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you all next time. Take care.